The Blue Jackets only made one move in free agent frenzy to bring someone into the team, but a handful of guys left. Who's gone? What does Sean Monahan do best for this team? And what does the team look like now? We're going to talk about all of that on today's Locked On Blue Jackets.
You're Locked On Blue Jackets, your daily podcast on the Columbus Blue Jackets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to Locked On Blue Jackets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I am, as always, your host, Jay Foster, here to give you the good, the bad, and the ugly about your favorite team and mine, the Columbus Blue Jackets. Before we get started, I want to thank everyone for making this your first listen of the day every single day. Locked On Blue Jackets is free and available on all podcast platforms and over on YouTube. I also want to let you know that this episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Playoffs are over, but the sports don't have to stop sporting. This summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus every day. That's right, there's something for everyone every single day, all summer long. Just visit FanDuel.com/locked-on to get started. Lot to talk about today. The Blue Jackets only really made one actual move, but there was a bunch of moves that they didn't make, I guess is the best way to say it. They bring in Sean Monahan. We're going to talk about that contract. And how I feel about it, and a handful of the Blue Jackets, UFAs, depth guys from the Monsters, basically all gone. So we'll talk about that in a little bit here. But I wanted to talk about the Sean Monahan signing because I didn't like it at first. I talked about it a little bit on yesterday's episode. I don't remember. I think I mentioned that he was an option. And I thought, but I was like, okay, let's get Sean Monahan for like 2 years at $2 million or 3 years at $3 million or something like that. Blue Jackets signed him to a contract, 5 years at $5.5 million a year. I was like, my immediate reaction was, ooh. And then I thought about it a little bit. I looked at the cap situation. I looked at Sean Monahan kind of as a player, and I'm still not like, it's still a little bit too rich for my taste. Maybe a year too long and $1.5 million too much. But I've actually kind of come around on the contract quite a bit. Potentially, that is. There's a lot of, again, this is a team with a lot of moving pieces right now. There's a lot of things that I think need to happen for the Sean Monahan signing to be deemed a success. And there's a lot of things that they need to avoid. So we'll talk about that in a minute, but I want to talk about Sean Monahan just kind of as who he is and what he brings to the table. And first and foremost, Sean Monahan is a legitimate option at center, probably best in a middle six role. Wins faceoffs, is consistently in the top half of faceoff wins, consistently over 50%. I believe he was top 20 in faceoff wins last season, and is, I want to say, 29 years old. So like, this is his kind of probably his last-ish contract. It's probably his last big contract anyway. And he's gone out and he's gotten his paycheck. So like, good for him, honestly. He has played most of his career with the Calgary Flames, had a season and a half or a season and a little bit with the Montreal Canadiens, played 25 games in 22-23, 17 points in 25 games, and then 35 points in 49 games with the Canadiens before they flipped him to Winnipeg at the deadline, where he had 24 points in 34 games, had 26 goals this season. He had the rare 83 game season because of what was happening when the trade went down. So we actually ended up playing 83 games this season, which is, I mean, like, he hasn't played a full season in a long time. He played 65 games in 21-22, which I believe the season was about that long. He played 50 games for the Flames in 2020-21, which I think they got shut down very shortly after the 50-game mark passed. So, like, he's played most of 2 full seasons, but he hasn't actually played a full 82-game season since 2016-17, barring last year, So, last year I thought was a really good sign. He produced well on a quite bad Montreal Canadiens team. And then held his own on a playoff-bound Winnipeg Jets team. Kind of quiet in the playoffs. Played 5 games for the Jets and only recorded 1 assist. 13 shots on goal, was 50% in faceoffs. And if we go back to faceoffs in the regular season, he's a career 51%. The last handful of years, actually, he's been excellent. So 21-22, 53.1. 22-23 was 55.1, was 55% with the Canadians last year, and then 54.7 when he got flipped to the Jets. So that, I haven't checked the numbers, but that's probably, if not the best on the Blue Jackets roster, it's definitely up there. And I think that can't be understated, that the Blue Jackets having a center that knows how to win faceoffs and actually is a center, because, I've been banging the Boone Jenner drum for a little while now. Love him as a player. I think he's a great player. He is so much more effective on the wing. Yes, he's the only one that can reliably win faceoffs right now, but bringing in a guy like Sean Monahan is great, if only for that reason. There's a couple of other reasons that I kind of like this signing. I think Johnny Gaudreau, obviously those guys are really, really close. I think in presser today, Sean Monahan said that they were best friends. Gaudreau wasn't necessarily the reason he came to Columbus. Columbus was on his radar anyway, allegedly. But having Gaudreau here certainly helps. And this is a player that Gaudreau has played with a lot. He's not had a consistent line mate while he's been in Columbus, and has still been, just under a point per game player, or near enough. Bring in someone like Monahan, who Gaudreau played with for a long time. There was, I think, 4 years in a row where they were first and second on the team in scoring, back before Monahan got real injured and started to fall off. And that's really enticing as well, because if you can get Johnny Gaudreau going, and maybe he won't reach that 115-point pace or mark that he hit his final year in Calgary, but if you can get, 80 to 90 points out of Johnny Gaudreau, or even, if he can flirt with 100 again because of Sean Monahan, again, that contract feels almost worth it, and it's not like the contract is like super overpaid and over budget or whatever. I think his contract estimate comes in as he is worth 4.6, but he got 5.5, so an extra 900K. And again, probably a year too long, but the cap's going up next year. The cap's hopefully, knock on wood, going to continue to go up. And I think that contract, it might age not great, but I think it'll probably age better than a handful of other contracts that the Blue Jackets have. So it's not the worst contract on the team by any means. I don't think it's going to age the worst on the team by any means. And I don't know. The more I think about it, the more I like this signing. And there's one more thing that I want to talk about in terms of Sean Monahan and why I like this signing, but that also ties into a potential issue with this contract signing. So we're going to talk about that in just a second here on Locked On Blue Jackets. First, I want to tell you about FanDuel. I love sports. I love them so much. I never want them to stop, but they got to stop sometime. The NHL is done for the summer. We're getting no games right now. The sports aren't sportsing like I want them to, but FanDuel is here for you. They let me keep the sports going whenever I want. You can keep the sports going whenever you want. All you got to do is open the app, dream up bets anytime you're in the mood. This summer, FanDuel is even hooking up every single customer with a boost or a bonus every single day. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. So head on over to FanDuel.com/lockedon and start making the most of your summer. FanDuel, a visual sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. Welcome back to Locked On Blue Jackets. We're talking all about Sean Monahan and what he brings to the team, and maybe what he doesn't bring to the team, and but mostly the first one, if I'm being honest. Something I didn't get a chance to talk about in the first segment, which is again a not inconsiderable reason why they brought him in, I think, is the Blue Jackets have a lot of young centers. Fantilli, Sillinger, Voronkov. And now, obviously, Caden Lindstrom in the mix as well. He's not going to be on the team next year, but he's going to be in the mix. Monahan should still be on the team by the time Lindstrom is ready to make the jump to the NHL. Having someone that these kids can learn from, I think, is invaluable. there isn't really anyone on the team that is like Sean Corrali ostensibly, but he's not that same kind of high level center that Monahan could be if he manages to stay healthy. We'll talk about that in a second here. But like Boone is here. Boone is a great veteran. He's a great captain. I don't know that he's great at teaching the kids what they need to know to become great centers in this league. I think Sean Monahan knows. He's been around the block. He was great as a veteran presence in Montreal for those 2 years. We're going to have one of the wonderful folks over at Locked On Habs come on the show to talk about Sean Monahan later this week, and we'll surely talk a little bit about that. But having someone for them to learn from, I think, is great. Again, would I have done the contract for this long and this much money? No, but free agency, you've got to overpay. I don't think it's a Columbus tax in as much as it's a free agency tax. I saw a couple of takes about that earlier today. People saying, well, that's the price that Columbus has to pay to get free agents. And I don't think it's a Columbus tax. I think it's a free agent tax. You see it every single year. Everyone gets overpaid in free agency, But that's another really big reason is letting the kids learn from him, letting him kind of go into that next stage of his career where he does get to be a veteran, he does get to be a teacher, and will still hopefully be able to provide potentially top six. I would put him more in the middle six position at center. But again, you can move him up and down the lineup. I would start him with Gaudreau. And if that means that Gaudreau is on the second line in order to give Fantilli more minutes, I'm okay with that. Which is what I want to talk about now, actually, which is kind of the flip side of having Monahan come in as a veteran center. And as someone that knows Johnny Gaudreau, is he's likely going to command those top line minutes, unless you do a real kind of 1A, 1B situation with Monahan and Fantilli. But Boone is going to move to the wing, I hope. Obviously, this is all kind of up in the air in terms of who the new coach is. We'll probably get an answer about that in a week or so. But if you can move Boone Jenner to the wing, then your centers down the middle are Fantilli, Monahan, Sillinger, Corrali, in that order, please, Blue Jackets. And then you've got Boone who can step in if needed. You've got Voronkov who can step in if needed. And I imagine Sean Corrali is probably, if not gone at the deadline, is probably gone as a UFA at the end of the season anyway. That frees up a spot for someone like Voronkov to slide back in to the center role. And then, in a couple of years, when Lindstrom is ready to make the jump, you can move things around again. That being said, if Monahan is going to get all of the ice time that we think Fantilli should, that's kind of when I'm going to start to have a problem with this signing, I think. We saw it with Boone Jenner last year. Boone Jenner played 24 minutes a game, 27 minutes a game. He played too much, and the kids got less and less ice time or inconsistent ice time. Now, a lot of this is because of the coach. Going to be a new coach. We don't know who it's going to be. We know it's going to be someone with NHL experience. My money is still on Todd McClellan. Wouldn't hate Jay Woodcroft as an option, but I think Todd McClellan is the front runner right now. Don Waddell said in his press conference today that he started doing interviews. So we'll see kind of where it goes from there. But if we start seeing Sean Monahan get the Boone Jenner effect, then that's something that I think I'm probably going to take umbrage at. And add into that Sean Monahan's injury history. He had a really great season this year. I think he was fully healthy this year for the first time in, quite a long time, because you can really kind of see the decline of, I believe it was around about 2018, 2019 when he got injured. And you can see just the sheer drop in efficiency for him, in points. He went from having 82 points in 78 games to 48 points in 70 games the next year, 28 in 50, 23 in 65. And then when he was with the Canadiens, started to pick back up again, had 17 points in 25 games for them, but did miss most of that season again with that kind of, I believe it's a recurring hip injury. So if Sean Monahan's healthy, if he's fully healthy, if he's ready to go, if he doesn't get injured again, which knock on wood, we know what the Blue Jackets are like. We know the injury curse. Sean, please don't wear 27. Because we need to just keep that number away from everyone who has even a hint of potential injury bad luck. But that's kind of, again, there's a lot of ifs With the Monahan contract, it's if he pans out, if he gets injured, if he can stay healthy, if he can recreate that chemistry with Gaudreau. Like, there's a lot of, again, moving parts, a lot of ifs, a lot of buts, lots of up in the airness. That's not a thing. But my point here is there's a real high risk, high reward, or medium risk, medium reward, probably high, medium high, medium-ish. I don't think he's going to turn into an elite center all of a sudden, but if he can be a serviceable, quite good center that can win face-offs and be a good influence on the kids, and he can be that for the bulk of his contract, great. If he gets injured year one and the Blue Jackets have to bury him in long-term IR, or if he comes back and just kind of limps his way through the contract, then that's not great, So I imagine it'll probably be somewhere in between those, hopefully closer to, I would love to see him play, 70 to 80 games this season, if not more. But I feel like someone with injury history, someone who is kind of in that stage in his career, if you can get 70 to 80 games out of Sean Monahan, and if you can get 70 to 80 good games out of Sean Monahan, then that feels like a pretty pretty good value for money contract for me. Again, in terms of like what I'm expecting for points, he had 59 points this season in total, I believe, if I am doing the math right. 59 points in 83 games. If we can get 50 to 60 points, maybe 60 to 70, depending on, but okay, let's aim for 50 to 70. We can get 50 to 70 points out of Sean Monahan and 20 to 25 goals next season. I'm thrilled. I'm not expecting the moon. I'm not expecting more than that, but I am quietly optimistic. And I know that quietly seems stupid because I've just spent 17 minutes talking about it and giving my opinion, but I am, I think, more optimistic now that I've had time to sit down and look at the player, look at the contract, look at the situation. That I feel much better than I did this morning. And then the other thing as well, which I haven't really talked about, and isn't really like much of a deal with Monahan specifically, but the Blue Jackets, even with the Monahan signing, still have $18.8 million in cap space. They only need to re-sign Marchenko, Sillinger, and Johnson with that money. Potentially Jake Christiansen will make a jump. But I'm not, again, I'm expecting maybe 1.5, maybe 2, probably not even that for Christiansen. So not going to break the bank. Even if that does go full 2 million, that's still almost $16 million to spend on Marchenko, Sillinger, and Johnson. I think I said yesterday that if you could get all three of those players done for 12 million, that feels reasonable. And if you move Laine, then you get an extra almost $9 million that you can do stuff with, I do think that this signing means that it is a little bit more important that you move all of Laine's contract. I feel like before this signing, I was happy for us to retain a little bit, but I think I would rather take a slightly lower return than retain money in this case. So, there's the potential to have, again, I can't do math on the fly, but potential to have almost $27 million in cap space. I don't think the Blue Jackets are done. They're looking for a depth defenseman. Who's that going to be? We don't know. But again, I'm not expecting the bank to break there exactly. In my opinion, they're looking for a Scott Harrington type, which again, I talked about yesterday, of someone who is maybe going to play 25 to 30 games. He's going to fill in for injuries. He's going to spend most of his time in the press box, and is going to just be that depth guy that doesn't need to play every night and is not an active liability when he's on the ice, as rare as the case may be. And again, that's 1.5, 2 million for a year, 2 years. That feels, again, I'm not mad about that. So they've still got cap flexibility. Everything is fine. Obviously, freeing up Boquist's $3 million gives them more flexibility. They're not signing Bean. They haven't signed Nylander. So now we wait and see what Marchenko, Johnson, and Sillinger's contracts are going to look like, and they'll probably sign them. I'm going to be on a plane like July 10th, so look out for a big news day then. Going to take another quick break, and then I want to talk about who the Monsters lost this on this free agent day, because a lot of the Monsters UFAs have gone to different teams. So we're going to talk about who's left and who has gone and where they've gone. So we'll talk about that in just a second here on Locked On Blue Jackets. Welcome back to Locked On Blue Jackets. We're talking about free agency, and the Blue Jackets only brought one player in, but they did sign two players to extensions, minor league or ELCs. Technically, I imagine both players will probably spend most of the time with Cleveland, but a bunch of their UFAs have gone elsewhere. So let's talk about that. First off, we'll talk about who stayed. Owen Sillinger has signed a 1-year contract. It's a 2-way contract. He, I believe, is too old to sign what's technically an ELC, but that's basically what it is. And then Cole Clayton, who is a depth defenseman for the Monsters and had a very good season with the Monsters and a decent playoffs as well, rewarded with a 1-year ELC for him as well. I think both of those things are potential injury cover, and hey, let's see if we've got some depth pieces here. Owen Sillinger, I like a lot. He plays that kind of friend of the show, Dina Weinheimer, always calls him the Swiss Army knife. You know, he does that Boone Jenner thing. If he plays anywhere in the lineup, first line, fourth line, wing, center, you could put him on defense and he'd probably be okay. Maybe not in goal, but hey, who knows? Again, Clayton, really solid depth defenseman for the Monsters. Not expecting to move the needle at the NHL level, but is good to have insurance, especially because a lot of the Monsters veteran core has gone elsewhere. So Josh Dunn has gone to Buffalo, and I believe signed a 2-year contract there. Nick Blankenburg has gone to Nashville. Brendan Gaunce has gone to Minnesota, and veteran defenseman Billy Sweezy has gone home to Boston. So that is 3 big pieces of the core, including the Monsters captain, and 1 potential top 4 defenseman in Blankenburg. So that's there are some holes to fill there. And Gaunce, Dunn, all 4 of them actually were on had NHL contracts because they all played up in the NHL this season. I believe, I don't remember if Billy Sweezy played this season or last season, but he's played in the NHL for the Blue Jackets either this season or last. So there's 4 guys on NHL contracts that they could use for call-ups. So like it makes sense that they have moved or given some more guys NHL, invited some more options for NHL lineups. We'll probably see a fair amount of them in preseason, but it's going to be a very different Monsters, team. I believe that's all of the UFAs have left. Carson Meyer hasn't gone elsewhere, but is going elsewhere essentially. Because they basically have just said that they are not signing. They basically said they're not giving him a contract. He hasn't signed it anywhere else yet, but he is going somewhere else. In terms of other players that haven't signed elsewhere but are former Blue Jackets, I do think that's all of them, minus Carson Meyer, obviously. But yeah, it's going to be and they didn't really add anyone to fill out the Monsters, and they did have a lot of players this year. They had a kind of a log jam, especially a lot of young players came in. The Blue Jackets are the Blue Jackets are gonna have to make a decision on players like Denton Matejchuk, who could potentially be a monster. Players like Gavin Brindley, I think, with the addition of Sean Monahan, makes it likely that Brindley is going to at least start the season in the AHL and is going to have to work his way up. Something else that Don Waddell said in his press conference earlier today is that yesterday, excuse me, because I'm recording this on Monday night. He said that it's really important not to rush prospect, and just because they look like they can play in the pros doesn't mean they're ready to play in the pros. And this was kind of in regards to a guy like Caden Lindstrom. It was in regards to David Jiricek, actually, and Denton Matejchuk. And he said he was really impressed with Denton Matejchuk. Watched him in the handful of games that he played for the Monsters at the end of the season, in the playoffs, and I think this applies to someone like Gavin Brindley as well. I really wouldn't be surprised to see him with the Monsters. I think he'll make a push to make the team, but adding in Monahan, again, lots of moving parts. If Line goes, you could see a space open up there for Brindley, but as of right now, I think it's going to be a very young Monsters team because all of the players are just babies, are just Blue Jackets prospects, which is not a bad thing. I can see Monsters fans being a little bit kind of disappointed by this, especially, they had such excuse the pun, monster season last year, that it'll feel like taking a step back. But looking at the players that the Blue Jackets have under contract for the Monsters next season, Hunter McCown is still there, Mikhail Pucha, Luca Pinelli, Luca Del Bel-Belouz, Jordan DeMay, Cameron Butler, who played last season. Max McHugh is starting his pro career. James Malatesta, who was an option at the NHL level, I believe. This organization likes him a lot. Chofik Swansky is still there. And, of course, Owen Sillinger. Similar things on defense. Cole Clayton. Corson Kuhlmans is still there. They've got Jiricek and Matejchuk both on the minor league roster right now. Samuel Kanasco, Ola Julian Bjork-Vikholm, Stanislav Svozil, and Jake Richardson needs a new contract but is still there. I've remembered another UFA, Malcolm Subban, who I don't believe has signed anywhere yet, but is unlikely to be back with the team, I think. I think Nolan Lalonde will be making the jump to the pros. So, again, lots of moving parts, lots of people. I assume we'll get more information kind of as and when it happens. Probably as soon as you guys listen to this, there will be more signings, more leavings, potentially a trade. So we'll update you as best we can. We're going to have another double episode day because yesterday I had a really great chat with James Tubb, who works for a newspaper in Medicine Hat, covers the Medicine Hat Tigers, and I wanted to get his insight on Caden Lindstrom. So we're going to have that out for you later this afternoon. I had a really great talk. Really, really even more excited about Lindstrom than I was previously. So that's coming up later today. Thank you for listening to this episode, for making it your first listen of the day every single day. Locked On Blue Jackets continues to be free and available on all podcast platforms, over on YouTube and on SiriusXM. Thank you for listening. Once again, I have been Jay Foster. You can find me on Twitter at _Jacob Foster, JAKOBFORSTER. You can find the show at LO_Blue Jackets. If you have comments, questions, criticisms, email me at lockedonbluejackets@gmail.com. Thank you once again for listening, and until this afternoon, make sure you stay locked on.